search styles. Sorry, there's lots going on. I'm trying to push buttons all at the same time and talk. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting out, we're going to be going through some searches that I know that there's some information here, so you can see what a typical search might look like and some of the techniques I use to get there. Just so that way we get you get an insight into how I think about the search and how you might be using the search tools as well. I am by no means an expert. Yes, I know a lot about newspapers. Yes, I know a lot about putting them online. I don't necessarily use this resource quite to the extent that I'm sure a lot of you do. So it's one of those things where if at any point I have if you have some tips or tricks yourself that are interesting and you think would be helpful, please feel free to chime in and we can talk about those. At first, I think what I'm going to do, and for the recorded part of this session, I want to go through my two kind of search scenarios, and you'll look at the site and be able to see what it is I'm doing. And then after that point, I would love to open it up and have some folks who are some experts who know some stuff share their things. If you have some questions about the site or about the search or any of the tools involved in it, feel free to ask them then, because then we can get into some of the nitty and gritty. For the question and answer period, I will shut off the recording. So your questions will not be recorded for posterity, only my muttering and strange hand gestures, and that's all you'll get. All right. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen, and then we'll talk about my first search scenario that we're going to go through. All right. Sound like an evil plan? Let's do it. Yay. Let's see. So I'm going to kick over and show you my screen. Now, hopefully you can see this. As far as I can tell, you can see this. And this is the website. I'm going to actually kick over here to this other screen for just a moment so we can look at my first request, search request paragraph. So typically what happens is that we do not do search requests on the behalf of people. Meaning when someone writes me an email and it's like, Chuck, I'm trying to find something in the site, I can't respond because there's just too many people asking all the time. And so I generally don't do requests. I sound like a wedding singer. But the idea is that typically we can't because we just don't have the time. But I did get this request from a gentleman just as we were doing the transition into the new website. And so I used his request as kind of test to see what I could find in the search engine. Okay. And so the first one here is about a murder that he vaguely remembered. And I think it's large enough that you all probably can see it. Let me make it a little tiny bit larger. So the idea is that he could remember something about a murder that had happened near where he was living at the time. Canandaigua man murdered an older man in his home off Amen Road. I don't know how it's pronounced locally. But this was a result of a dispute over a bad used car deal. And so he went on to tell us some details. So when I was looking at this, some details that stuck out to me was a young man from Canandaigua. So that's one. I thought that was an interesting piece of information. Amen Road was another piece of interesting information. And then Burmeister, like the Olders man, might have been something like Burmeister. In which case, for me, that was like another tell, a possible piece of information. And then the guy went on to say that he wrote a little bicentennial history book for the town of West Bloomfield. I'm like, town of West Bloomfield. Now, I've lived in northern New York State my entire life. I have a kind of cursory understanding of where things are in the rest of the state because, you get around a little bit. But I had no idea where West Bloomfield was. And so that for me, this is like the first stop because I want to know where West Bloomfield is, at least what county. So here's this is just the Google quick and dirty Google search. And so the quick and dirty says northwest edge of Ontario County. Okay, West Bloomfield borders Livingston and Monroe. All right, so for me, that's kind of like the first stop. Like, okay, I know now geographically where I'm going. And the guy's name is Burmeister, so that seems like that might be a place to start. So now I'm back over on the historic newspaper website, and I've zoomed in the site a little bit, hopefully so you can see it a little better. It might look a little different depending on the size of your screen when you go to visit the website in the first place. So a couple of things. First of all, I logged in. I've already created an account for the website, and I've logged in. And the reason I do this is because one of the killer new features in this is the ability to go into your account and create private lists, meaning this is a way for you to create storage sets of newspaper results, okay? But you have to have an account and you have to log in. Now, I promise we're not going to spam you with a bunch of email. We don't do it very often. In fact, I'm not even sure we've done it yet for the new site. Once you get an opportunity, we might invite you to our mailing list. And by the way, you can always sign up to our mailing list from here as well. And I'll show you where that is towards the end. But I'm signed in. So step one, I signed in. Step two, we were talking about, I've already forgotten which counties. Ontario County. So Ontario County's right here. I'm going to start my search in Ontario County. So I've clicked Ontario. And it also said Monroe and Livingston on there, right? So let's see. Let's find Monroe. I'm going to check off Monroe. And I'm going to check off Livingston. There's Livingston. And so now you'll see that all three of these counties are red. So that's where I'm searching. And so now these are all the titles that we have on the site that are in that area. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go with Burmeister murder and see what we can find. This is just a simple straight up, pop it in there and see what the search pulls up for us. So the guy also mentioned in our original one that it was in the 1970s. So I have a lot of results here. I mean, granted, 38 results. It's not a boatload of results, but it is some. And so right now, probably the thing to do is to look at the 1970s results. Anything that's 1940s, probably not super helpful. 1970s are better. So, okay, great. I've already got one right here, but if I want to get more fancy about limiting them, I can go over here to where it says decade, and I can pick the one at the bottom here where it says 1970 to 79, in which case it's going to relimit that down. And now what I have is just 2 results. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at this first one. So the search is going to be a little slow because I'm now broadcasting to a whole bunches of people. So it's going to be a little slower than normal. But you'll notice, and it's a little faint to see, and I understand it's a little faint to see, is the little red highlights here, which have our search terms in them. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, but I bet you this is the right place. Recluse found murdered, planned to collect a link. That's another over there. Canandaigua, a man charged. Okay, so there's this statement right here. So let's go zoom in and have a look. So our gentleman that wrote us in that search result did us a favor, really, because he remembered Burmeister. And Burmeister was the key word in this one, right, to be able to get to our murder. So here's Burmeister's house. And in his search result, he said it's something about being a virtual shack. I'm guessing when looking at it, it seems like that's about right. And as we go down through the thing, we can see found the body, medical examiners discovered had been shot to death, bullet lodged in his heart. So all of this makes sense. Hey, look, we already have arrested a Canandaigua man in connection with the shooting, David P. Crossett. So there we go. We already have now the name of the person that was, first of all, we know who was murdered. It was Burmeister. Do we have his first name here someplace? George. So George Burmeister was the person who was killed. And then we have some discussion about what happened exactly. Was not missed for a long time after his death because of his manner. He was a hermit living in a world of junk. His yard and house containing unbelievable collection of old cars, tires, and trash. And an unfriendly German Shepherd named Caesar. Great. All right, so now we've got something about the murder, so we're a little more detailed. Let's see if we can find something about this David P. Crossett. By the way, if I wanted to go back, and before I jump out for a second, I'm going to write down this. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to write down because we've got this cool new feature to show you. This is the original. This is the article. If you notice over here, we've got tools off to the side. One of the tools I wanted to show you today, especially, is this little plus sign. So what that does is it allows me to create a new list. And I'm going to say Burmeister murder. And I'm going to say first article. So I just put a little note about what it was, and I'm going to say add. So now I've bookmarked this so I can go back to it later. So let's go back to the original search and see because there were 2 results. Let's see what the other result was, just out of curiosity. So up here, I've got this thing that'll go back to the main search result, or I've got these little arrows that allow me to go to the next search result. So you know what? I'm just going to save myself some time. I'm going to go to the next search result since I only had 2. Bop over here and see what we got. This may be nothing. You never know. So here's the pink again down here in the corner. Oh, it's not a corner, it's the middle of the page. And so this is just a recap of the year's news so far. Our first issue in January is marked by the story of the murder of George Burmeister. All right, so that didn't tell us a whole lot more. All right, so I'm going to go back to the search for this. And so again, we've got the decade, we've got the counties, and we have the Burmeister murder. Let's see if we can find out about that guy, except now I've forgotten what his name was. Let's see. Let's go back for a second. I forgot to write down his specific name. Interested in so it was David P. Crossett. Cool. All right, let's go back to the search and let's see if we can find out more about David P. Crossett that we didn't know before. So all I'm doing in this case is I'm just doing a straight up, put these things here and hit search and see what comes up. Well, we got P by itself to Crossett. You know what? Let's go ahead and I'm going to use some quotes and see if we can find some David Crossett and see if we get any responses. Not in this time period and not in these counties. All right, I'm going to use another technique. This is called fuzzy searching. So the idea here is on the old site, it used to be called searching within and then a certain number of items, okay? 3 or 5 or 10, I think were the options on the old site. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the tilde key, which is in the upper left-hand corner of my keyboard. And then I'm going to use a number of words. So let's do tilde 3. Let's see if we get any better results out of that. All right, that looks like still the same. Ooh, hang on. Sentenced David B. Crow. Let's have a look at this page. See if we get a little bit of information about this guy. Oh, so this is a result. Crossett gets up to 25 years in rifle slaying. So now we get a little bit of information about what happened to our gentleman who committed this crime. The sentence was handed down on Thursday, June 7th. Crossett pleaded guilty to a charge of first-degree manslaughter. He was sent to the Elmira Reception Center because he's under the age of 25 years of age. Interesting. All right, so there's a little bit of information about our target, meaning we've got a little bit more information. I'm going to go ahead and add this I'm going to add it to our Burmeister murder list, and we're going to say cross-set sentencing. So that way I've got now some record of that. I'm going to go back out to the search, and then just out of pure curiosity, let's see if there are any other. I'm just going to pull the county out and see what else we got, because it's possible there might be other stuff that happened in other newspapers. I'm not seeing anything that immediately jumps right out, although this one is interesting. Youth pleads guilty in man's death. So this is looks like an AP article. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one as well. So this one actually has a piece of information we didn't see in the other one. It says Burmeister's body was found 20 days later. They said in the other one he hadn't been missed for a while. Wow, 20 days. I bet you that was a nasty crime scene to see. So you can see already, like I'm using just jumping back and forth. Sometimes if I do a search and I'm a little too specific in my search, I have a tendency to back out again a little bit and look a little wider to see what I can find. What I wanted to show you about that list that I was creating too is if I go back to my account, go to private lists, and I bring up the Burmeister murder, you'll see there are the 3 results that I found so far. And what's really neat about the lists at this point is there's also this thing where you can email the thing. And the reason the emailing it is fun is because now you have the ability to take it out of the website and send it to your email and then forward that email to anyone else that you need. I could see if you were a historian at a historical society and you're doing research on the behalf of someone else, it would be really nice to be able to take all of these results that you found, compile them into a single list, and then you could forward the email to whoever your client or patron is with a list of those things. I think that's a pretty neat idea. The other thing too is that if you have a tendency to be like me and you've got a running set of searches that you're always looking for, you'll pile them all into a single list. Yes, this is a list of all the places that I am specifically mentioned in the newspaper site. So far, I found 19 of them, which is pretty good. I didn't realize I was in the newspaper that frequently. Don't worry, none of them are larceny or anything else. I've behaved myself. So here's the Burmeister murder. So this was basically a response to our gentleman who was looking for some more information about this murder that he kind of sort of vaguely remembered. So this was really great. Like, I'm glad that he remembered Burmeister. I'm a little afraid that if he hadn't known the name, we would have spent a lot more time just locating more about Amman Road. I believe what we learned from this page, if I remember correctly, is that Amman, he actually spelled Amman differently than the way it was written here. Oh, one more N. I mean, what to do? Maybe we'd be able to find it with that. And the fact that it was in Menden. So, all right, so that's our first search. Let's talk about our second search on here. This is the exotic animals. So my father-in-law, later in life, every once in a while would spout out a weird story that he came across that, would appear in his memory. I mean, towards the end of his life, he had a brain tumor. So there were bits of his memory that were working and bits that were not. One of the bits that was working one day is he was telling this story that his father told him that he had seen elephants and other exotic animals in Potsdam when he was a young child, and that it was because of a train derailment. I'm sure the people who are North Country locals who are into history are probably screaming at the screen right now. Chuck, of course, that was a big thing that happened in the North Country. I don't know. I didn't know anything about the story at the time. So I figured this would be a good topic of something that perhaps we could go looking for. In that story, he always specifically mentioned the fact that he'd seen an elephant in Potsdam. All right, not your usual thing that you see in the North Country, but fine. So let's go ahead and see if we can find some information about this train derailment and these exotic animals in Potsdam. So I want to clear my search. And so here's a great tip. If you click on the logo at the top of the screen, it will clear whatever your search is. Anything that you search for, and then if you move between the search screens or you move somewhere else inside the site, will always, that search phrase will follow you around. The only good way to clear it is to hit the button at the top and wipe that baby out. Okay, so if you hit the logo, you're starting with a clean search. So this was in St. Lawrence County. So I'm going to start by heading over to St. Lawrence County. And so now these are, again, all the titles in St. Lawrence County that we have available. And I'm going to start off by going, let's do just a simple train, elephant. Let's see if we get anything good. While we're here and while we're about to look at some further results, let's talk about this stuff at the top. If you first visit our site, it might look like this. Okay, meaning you type in your search and you're going to get your items here. But if you want to see that little paragraph of stuff that has the date and the titles and the summaries and all of that good stuff, you've got to go over here and hit this little search drop down thing. And what it does is that pulls this stuff down for you to look at. All right, so that's a thing. The other thing I wanted to point out here is the search summaries. I have mine set to text. So that means that what it's doing is it's pulling out the optical character recognition, the OCR, for the text of what it thinks is on each of those pages so you can actually see the match. Okay. If you want to see the actual page or a little snippet of the page, you can click Images and then hit your search again by clicking on the magnifying glass. In which case, instead, you're going to get a little snippet of the page that has what it's talking about. Okay. So I'm just looking through these off the top of my head and I'm not seeing anything. I'm going to go back to the text because my brain just processes text faster than it does the images. So we'll go back and look at the text again. So, okay, I've got 4,000 results for train and elephant. That's perhaps not super helpful. Buying a big elephant? What? To train an elephant, use loving care. Elephant intelligence. I don't know. None of this stuff looks pretty good to me. So you know what? Let's put that in quotes. Because the way I figure it is any story we're looking for, it's got to have train and elephant somewhat close together, just not on the page someplace. Because all train and elephant does is show me all the pages with train, show me all the pages with elephant, and then checks to see if there's any where a train and an elephant appear on the same page. And apparently a lot of things do. So I'm going to go ahead and give that, and I'm going to use that same fuzzy search, except I'm going to expand it out and say within 10 words, maybe. Let's have a search and see what comes up. All right, so let's look through these. Little horse that raced a train. Okay. Elephant train descended into the valley and crossed the plain. I mean, it sounds cool, but I don't know if that's what we were looking for. Training an elephant. No. Oh, hey, this one looks good. Look at this one. It says, okay, married the cars. Elephant train broke own visitors and derailed the train. Well, it was a train derailment, right? So let's go look at this and see what this says. All right, and so we'll zoom in on our little pink spot and see what it says. The recent fire in the menagerie of the Ringing Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus, in which 40 animals lost their lives, recalled to all Potsdam people the time the Great Circus showed in Potsdam, much against its will. That is, when the axle of one of the cars of the elephant train broke and derailed the train, and trained horses, beautiful Arabians, and other show animals met their death at the Clark Crossing on the Norwood Road. Clark Crossing. All right, so that's a new piece of information we didn't have before. This isn't an article about that specifically, but it's mentioning the thing that we want. Interesting. All right, so let's try, rather than training elephants, let's check about Clark. Whoops. I promise I can type crossing. Trained, maybe? Let's see if there's any articles about that. Swampy bit of land alongside the tracks by Clark's Crossing. Just, it might be a, all right, I want to see this. John Gaffney recalls the killer wreck of the greatest show on earth. Oh, wow. All right. I think this might be what we're talking about. But he stumbles across those skeletons. He's going to be, well, mighty surprised. He'll find crowded in a narrow trench the remains of over 30 animals. Some of them, unlike, have walked this part of the earth in modern times. Not quite 100 years ago. Oh, here we go. Here's the date. So John Gaffney was just 19 years old when it occurred in August 22nd, 1889. So here's an article about this particular event. What beasts are buried there is a matter of discrepancy. 2 elephants, 7 tigers, and 27 horses. But the newspaper clippings of the day said that there were 28 circus horses, 2 camels, and a mule. And that the lions and tigers were safely brought on a sliding trail at Sissonville. Train jumped the track was one of 3 special trains. Oh, look at this. So here's another thing that's interesting. The incident occurred late at night. Okay, created a hellish scene. It's described in the page of the Courier and Freeman. Hey, we're in the Courier and Freeman. So what was the date? August 22nd, 1889. I wonder if we have, this is a quote from that newspaper. I wonder if we have this newspaper. So let's go look. So I'm going to go to the Courier and Freeman. So I'm going to click on the Courier and Freeman. Oh, you know what I should have done? I am terrible. Before we go away, I'm at the Courier and Freeman. This is the article from 1980. Let's create a new list. So I've got one. Elephants in Potsdam. Recalling article. What was it? 1980? 1980 something. All right, so we'll go like that. All right, now let's go see about the Courier and Freeman. It was August 22nd, 1889. So now here I am in the Courier and Freeman landing page, and you'll notice that the search that I just did also landed here. Interestingly enough, I don't think we saw any articles from that time period. Let's go back though and look here. So let's jump to 1880. So here's 1880 at the top of the screen, and it was 1889. So there's 1889. Let's go over to August. And it said it was the 22nd. So this was when it happened on Thursday night. I wonder if we can find something in the next week's issue of the paper. So this is the Courier and Freeman from the following week. And let's see if we can find something about some elephants, man. Oh my God, look at the size of the text on this page. Lordy. All right, I'm not seeing anything on that one. Let's go out. This text is so itty bitty tiny. This is going to take forever, folks. South Colton, married, died. I am not a genealogist. Let's see over here. Oh, here we go. Do you notice that their links were pink? Although on a page like this, it would be almost impossible to see the highlights. But here's the original article. I'm going to stop scrolling so it'll clear up the rest of the screen here eventually. There we go. A broken axle brings disaster to the greatest show on earth. 6 cars demolished, 28 horses, and 2 camels killed. All right. So this gives now the article about what actually happened at the time. There was a crunching, grinding, roaring noise and a tremendous crash. The first train passed on, not knowing of the accident. Scattered about the grounds could be seen Burmese cows, blooded horses, trained ponies, huge elephants swaying their ungainly forms, enormous camels quietly cropping the grass. So it's entirely possible that my father-in-law's father did see elephants and camels, evidently, in Potsdam, New York, or close to Potsdam, New York. And the story goes on that a bunch of different people went to see it. Wow. All right. So there's another example. So I guess the ravings of an old man with a brain tumor might have been correct. There might have been Potsdam in elephants wandering the grounds of in Potsdam freely at one point, because why wouldn't there be, right? So let me add this article to my list. Oops, not, we want an existing elephants in Potsdam. Original article ad. All right, great. So we're about a halfway through the hour that I promised you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to home. I am going to clear my results. So I'm back to the basics here. I am going to go into the recording, if I can find the button from here. And I'm going to shut off our recording for the day, and then we can ask some questions. Where's the record button? There we go.